What's up, family? This is your boy Gerald. It is Sunday, the 26th of September, 2021. How is everybody doing? Waiting for my coffee to finish brewing. So, in lieu of this, I'll put it on pause so I can refill. So, this morning, I got up, took Ming out, and as I always do, I give thanks for one, being able to. You know, I think that's something that people take for granted because, unfortunately, there is somebody that did not. So I make a point to acknowledge my existence. But I also see the responsibility of my existence. And this was a process. I look back to where I am almost a decade ago. Matter of fact, um, October 11th will be 10 years that I've been chronicling my experience, my journey, my walk, allowing my progression to define my purpose. So how you been? How you doing? How was last night? Are you allowing yourself to truly decompress from the week past? And in the midst of that, have you done some reflecting? Because a lot of people won't do that because a lot of people unfortunately live their life on autopilot, and that's how things of significance get overlooked. They're not acknowledged. So, with that being said, I, I wanted to put this video out for a couple reasons. So this, for some of y'all, I cannot stress. I know one of the reasons why, one of the things you've been pondering um, has been your history. And in regards to uh, where you come from, who you connected to, historical data that is out there that can be released only through your DNA. Well, if y'all remember, almost, no, I think it was January. January, I went on ahead, January of this year, I went, ordered Ancestry. Um, I was kind of nervous because you're talking truth. And there's a reason why I'm putting this all out there too. And I said, well, for those that know, the one thing that I've been focused on these last 2 years was I wanted to know my ethnic history. Now, I also take that as a grain of salt because you're basing that is kind of like casting a net, and some things will be general, some things will not because they're going to base that off of public record. Let's be honest about that because it used to be a time you could go to the National Archives. I remember my mom took me when I was a little boy, and we went down to the Smithsonian, and everything historically chronicalized was compressed on microfilm. And the only way you could get that data, you had to go there and basically off your research, do the work. So many hours my mom was dedicated to knowing her lineage, you know, because I can joke about this now, but when I was a little boy, I used to always get picked on in regards to what I was. They're like, "What are you? You biracial? You know, you look a little Italian. Your skin is, you know, very fair." And when I was young, I was very um, fair skinned. To give you a visual, you know, think of Diana Ross's son. You know, or who else was very fair skinned? You know, there were others that I just had very fair skin to the point that if you grabbed me with pressure, your handprint would be there. It was just boom. But I used to catch it all the time because of the skin I was born in. Had no control of that. And with that being said, looking back, I also know that was a time where, especially in the melanated community, when it came to family history, they didn't talk about it. Those were difficult. Those were difficult times because you look at the '60s and the '70s. You were dealing with the segregation. You were still dealing with racism that was eminently put out there without any recourse. And yes, racism still exists. It's just more subdued, more subjective. With our own people, let's not get that twisted because it just seemed like because of the color of my hue, I was always looked at as less than. I can't tell you how many fights I got into because of ignorance. So I went through a lot of pain, cried a lot of tears, but through it all, I would not be moved. And I always knew that that was a question that was looming in my spirit to know. Because let's be honest, I'm blessed to be in my early 50s. Yeah, don't get it twisted. I know. It's because I took care of myself in my 20s and my 30s and somewhat in my 40s. Well, in my 20s and my 30s, I was a straight up gym rat. I didn't have a social life. If you saw me, I was that dude that was always in the gym. I was big. I was in my early 20s. I was like 245. I had like 15% body fat. I was ripped. That brought me happiness because number one, fitness will never lie. It will always tell you where you're at. But it should inspire you to better yourself. So I wasn't out there like that. But fast forward through serving my country, it afforded me a lot of opportunities to travel, to educate myself, to be given the opportunities to be in places that folks only dream about. And I will never take that for granted. However, one of the things that was always talked about in the service was to be responsible, especially as a single soldier. Who you with? Who you sexually active with? And I can tell you, family, I did nothing but strive to try to do that. Because, see, you got to understand in the early, I joined the service in 92. Technically 91. I was on delayed uh, enlistment program because Desert Storm was still going on, Desert Shield. And they had delayed uh, people from going to boot camp um, for almost 8, 9 months, depending on your career skill and the branch. So you got this young guy, eyes optimistic about the world because we're traveling. Um, Now, granted, when I was younger, you know, that was still afforded to me because my dad was also prior service company, also served in the Air Force. So, as a little boy, you know, I do remember the military dependent lifestyle, and that was kind of a gift and a curse to a child because you knew that the probability of forming friendships and bonds could be traumatic because you knew about 3 years or so. Okay, the bonds that you built, they're about to disappear because they got to go on, you know, and that can be very hard on a child, you know, because they're learning their social dynamic of communication and understanding, you know. So it's always ever changing. Anybody that has been experienced military life as a dependent can relate to what I'm talking about. Now, fast forward. One of the things that used to be, there was always an ongoing sentiment that tried to be instilled with the younger military, the younger soldiers, male or female. They always pushed being sexually responsible because it's no different where you are in a town near you, city near you, state near you, worldwide. People want to be with people that they are connected to. However, sometimes when you're not responsible enough, a child may be conceived. We used to call that Jody. And they, you know, my senior leadership would always beat that drum when we would have our quarterly commanders call, like, don't be Jody. Don't be Jody because Jody is going to have a hard road. Be smart. And I appreciate that. But it still happened. It still happens. It still happens not every day outside the military. So, here's my point. So, I took DNA test in January. For some reason, the sample got contaminated. They sent me a replacement. And for almost 6 to 7 months, that sample, that new box, I just kept it in one of my closets. I was like, I'll get to it whenever I get it to it because my focus was on other things. Now, granted, I have told you guys that I really believe I'll say 96% believe I have a son. I have a son that I knew nothing about. And timeline based off of his birth puts me ballpark of where I was in my first enlistment. But I won't know until the second sample. I ended up submitting that a couple weeks back. So I guess with the DNA will tell you who you're related to. And if by chance he has done DNA somewhere, it's in there somehow, we'll see the correlation. But even on a deeper note, I want to make sure I don't have any children out there that I do not know about, because I strive to be a responsible black man. I really did, um, but no excuse. So I'm looking forward to when that result. I think the results. The last email I got, they said that it should be available in 3 more weeks. I'll know. Because right now, definitively, I know I have one child. That's my daughter. Now, I know because she was conceived when I was married. And then not to sound crass, not to, but genetically, she looks like me. You know, like you remember how everybody would watch Maury, and one of the aspects of Maury was the DNA paternity test, right? My genes are so strong in my family tree. First of all, we all look alike. Our eyes, our eyebrows, our structure. You see it. It's our lineage is very obvious. And every time she wakes up and looks in the mirror, she sees me because it's very, very obvious. This, you know how it is. You see somebody like, yeah, definitely that's your child. But I want to know for peace of mind that there may not. I just want to make sure there's no one out there that's related to me searching for me. And if that comes to be the case, I want to afford them the opportunity to know me. Now here's the hard part. And a lot of people overlook this one aspect. A lot of times people go through life with the things that they're afraid of and they try to bury it. And what ends up happening is that fear ends up causing them to become bitter. And it only happens because they yearn for a truth, and that truth will set them free. And they're afraid of it. Now, I will say, some people hope that how can I say this? You know how sometimes you always hear about stories about, oh, this man, he revealed some stuff on his deathbed. I think that is the ultimate injustice you could do to people that are connected to you. Because even though you may think it was in the best interest of them, but truly saying the best interest should have been you letting them know. Allow them to process it, them from you to withheld. Because what ends up happening is whatever perception or bond or connection that they may have had, when the truth comes out, it is going to challenge said truth. So for me, I need to freaking know. Now I know for some this can be very stark. I know for some this is nothing but downright terrifying. But really, when you think about it, it is being authentic. Because what a person can never do is say, you know what? They were truthful. Some people do. Some people hold things because they know if it comes out, it is going to have an implication that will impact their life, or forever change whatever they thought their foundation was built off of. They're like, no, that ain't you. That never was you. You understand what I'm saying? Hold on a second. My coffee's ready. Okay, I'm back. So, for me, I refuse to live a deceptive life. That is, some people have gotten to a point of conditioning where they say, well, that's what sharks do. You got to have a shark-like mentality or a bull and take what you want. Kick the door down, proverbially. How it goes, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than ask at all. But I actually believe it shows more courage to have the conversation needed and have without any inhibitions and know where you stand than to spend 1 minute in deflection or denial. That's for somebody. That's for somebody. Because I come to understand that if it doesn't come from a pure place, it's gonna rob you of your joy. It's gonna delay your peace of mind, and it's gonna set you up to be paranoid, which will jade your perspective of what you see life is to be. That's why you hear people say, "Oh man, you're just ungrateful. I do this, I do that, and you don't appreciate nothing." I'm talking about people in relationships that are going through stuff like that. You always have that one person that is venting, right? They're the ones that are putting forth the effort. Of course they appreciate it because you keep doing it. You know why they appreciate it? Because they're benefiting, because you're saving them from having to do it themselves. Who am I talking to? Another reason, so let me put that on pause. Somebody asked me through the comments. They said, "Gerald, I've been watching your videos. Sometimes they're winded, but then there's a lot that it seems like you're talking to me, and I appreciate that. But what is the real reason why you make your videos?" Number one, I didn't decide to set out one day to be a blogger. When I embraced my spiritual walk, I knew that what was required is for me to literally bare my soul so I could see what needed to be changed to feel free. You realize how many people on the outside seem or portray like they got it going on, but in the inside, they are the most insecure people that you will come to know. At times, they seem like they ain't got it all, like they're walking schizophrenic. Why? Because they got some questions they need answered. But they don't have the courage for them to fall from their mouth. Like they're afraid that whatever the reaction may be would be so unsettling. But guess what happens? I've come to learn that if you are in a position where you feel that you are at your wit's end, proverbially you are, because on the other side of that is change. Who am I talking to? If you feel that you are in a place where you're at your rock bottom. You know it. Guess what? The moment that you acknowledge that is the what is being displayed, you have just given yourself permission to stand up. You may have heard people say, you know, they have a bulletproof mindset. Nothing phases them. That could be true for a few, for a selected few. Now, to obtain that mindset or that mentality, you must acknowledge everything about you. Everything. The things that give you strength and the things that make you feel insecure. And acknowledge that. Here's a good visual. Y'all remember back in the day, hip hop icon, the rapper Eminem. He made a movie called 8 Mile. And in his music, he is always talked, a lot of times out of pocket, about his mom, but also about his environment that he was raised in, right? And the whole premise of the movie was when he would go get in those ciphers, steel versus steel, lyrically, his opponents would always gravitate towards what they assumed was his insecurities. But it wasn't until the moment he himself acknowledged. Because once you acknowledge what makes you feel afraid, you then have the power to change it. Who's that going off for? Who's that going off for? Is that your light bulb moment right there? Thank you, folks. You tired of people looking at you sideways? You're tired of people making you feel like instead of them laughing with you, they're laughing at you. You are the condescending butt of the joke and you don't get it. First of all, those are not your friends. They're not. Because if anybody truly, genuinely gave a damn about you, they're not going to say anything to tear you down. There's nothing wrong with being given constructive criticism when asked, or when you're at risk and you don't know it. That's what a friend's supposed to do. Because they would want the same thing for you as they exhibit in them. Who am I talking to? And I know this is going to be frustrating for some of y'all because you got that one friend that you would proverbially give your last breath for, and the way that they've treated you, you didn't realize it. But the moment of clarity that it came upon you, you started to look back. You started to see the nuances in behavior. I'm like, I didn't see that. I didn't see that before. Wow. And you have, and of course, these are the same people that will act different amongst the peer group, but are totally different when it's intimate. Why is that? Because secretly, your connection to them is entertainment, but it's really deflection from their lives. You may be the indirect inspiration of what they have yet to master within themselves. So, of course, there are going to be certain conversations they're not going to talk about. They're going to steer clear. They're going to try to do everything they can to distract you from what needs to be discussed. Why? It's not important to them. They have accepted their way of life. And they stand on that at that time. Can people change? People can change every damn day, fam. That's a choice. You don't need permission to change. You tired of health issues? You know what you need to do. You can buy as much stuff as you want online. But until you decide to put your foot down, put the other one down, stand on it, you will not change. And what happens? With that continued conditioning, you will become bitter. And depending on how severe it may be, you may indirectly allow delusion to take place or enter your life. You see it all the time. People turn around, oh, that ain't me. They try real quick to dispel whatever you're saying, even though what you're saying with sincerity cuts them. And it might not even come from a place of malice. Don't go there. And you know, because they instantly react. That's why I mentioned yesterday, how is it in 2021, as much advancement and technology that we have in society, still you have people that cannot have a conversation, cannot formulate a dialogue. Why is that? And what do? Because you don't like what is being communicated, you instantly go on the attack. Well, that's why this is this, and that's why you that. Papa. That's nothing but deflection, family. That ain't nothing but. Listen, why do you think the proverbial saying, "Birds of a feather flock together"? But there's no honor in that. Because it's connected by fear. Because the saying really goes, birds of a feather flock together. But if they don't have direction, they only find destruction. Or birds of prey. You can play with your life all you want. And like, for example, just as you have so many people that talk about empowerment, why is it in 2021 these people don't talk ownership, emotional ownership? But yet, through behavior, give up mental real estate. Why? What I mean by that is, it's easier to hold a grudge than have a conversation. Why they do that? You know what I'm saying? Or the old proverbial, if you can't beat them, join them. But if they can't join themselves or embrace themselves, where's the loyalty in that? If you see somebody and their behavior is less than, what do you think they're going to do to you? Misery loves company, family. Or here you go. This is what I had to learn this. It it took me literally 6 years to understand. There is no reward in victimhood, victim shaming, being the sacrificial lamb, or the martyr, no matter how you deflect it. Oh, well, disclaimer, because I'm about to say some stuff. It may be, I need to keep the peace, so I better know my role, because if I don't, there's gonna be some bullshit. There's gonna be a price to be paid. Or here you go, let's flip it. Well, I give him this leg, and I do some things that I normally don't do. He gonna pay my bills. Or flip it. Well, if I just give her what she wants, she'll take me more serious. She'll finally act right. We'll finally be on board. Come on, man. Nobody can be on board nothing until they decide to be within themselves. And guess what? This is a learned behavior, family. This is a behavior that has been learned by bad behavior shown. That's why you hear people say, hurt people, hurt people. But on the flip side, we teach people how we need to be treated. How can that be done? You must establish a conversation of what is accepted. But people are afraid. They're afraid. They're afraid. That's why I always would echo, you want to know your friends? You want to know if they're your friends or not? Ask them this question. What's your purpose? What's your purpose? And if they cannot answer that, that is a telltale sign they will never see the value in having access to your life. If you can't answer that, you are doing a disservice to anyone you come in contact with. Why? Because that's a telltale sign that you have, at the least, have not allowed yourself to understand what makes you you. Who am I talking to? King. You can turn around and embrace the narrative of what is being put out there. You're entitled to that. You're supposed to look at life analytically, with logic and balance. But until you understand who you are, how can you understand where you're going? How are you going to understand what's required to define your character, your integrity, self? I'll spin it. You know how many people that long secretly, because they have so much investment in ego and pride. You hear this, I'll hurt you before you hurt me. but you're already indirectly hurting yourself because you're not investing in yourself. With that being said, it's making me think about this. When I embraced my walk back in 2011, one of the there were I was at an emotional state that, first of all, let me one of my greatest passions has always been music. At one time, as a little boy, I actually um, I was inspired. I wanted to be in radio. Um, I always admired the DJs that were out there on across the genres. Uh, one of the uh, one of the DJs that I would always gravitate to was this DJ named Casey Kasem, and he did the pop top 40 on the weekend, right? And he would tell little stories and little monologues and stuff, and every now and then you would get a snippet of what popular music that was being promoted, the backstory, and I was very intrigued in that, and I was very inspired. And there were others. Casey Kasem was the number one. Shadow Stevens was number two, and then later on, as I started to enter my early teens, I really started gravitating towards R&B, because where I lived at that time, R&B wasn't being promoted, or you may have had one R&B station, but it was on AM, and of course the quality of sound was distorted. So it's like, it wasn't fresh. And this is in the beginning of hip hop for me. So my love affair for music goes back a long way. I played a couple of instruments in my youth, but I was always that kid that your favorite local DJ would come on, you go get the cassette tape, and you would record their set. That was me. You hear a song that really moves you, and you try to hit record and catch the whole song without them talking over it. That was me. And I always had inspired to do that. And I still, to this day, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. That love affair is still strong. Now, here's my point. For me, that would be considered a passion. A passion is anything that you would be willing to do for free because it's a joy to do. It's not work. It comes from your spirit. So, when I look at people today, where's the passion? Because what is being misconstrued is you have a lot of people that have put a price tag on their passion. My second passion was humanity. I was always that little boy that always looked at the world for, why do we do what we do? I know that sounds deep, but that was me. So, lastly, King, if you don't know what your purpose is, how are you going to understand your direction? As you mature, you gain knowledge and wisdom. But let's go a little deeper. One day, you will make the decision that you will seek out a wife. If you don't know where you're going, you don't understand your foundation, how do you expect her to find safety in your direction? And that's where we are now. There's so much opposite polarity going on. That doubt has crept in with a lot of despair, a lot of delusion, and unfortunately a lot of deception, to the point that people have adopted the mindset of, well, you know what, I can do bad by myself and I'd rather go it alone. You are entitled to that, because that's what being adult is all about. You'll come to understand the greatest commitment you'll ever make will be to your companion, because it's a selfless act. But you can't preserve that if you don't have the ability to have a communication, to have a conversation, to address and discuss the needed things to keep things going in the direction that you should be going together. That's what being yoked is about. But if you're putting more effort in deflection, you're arguing all the time, you're breaking up your shit. Never understood that. Why are you in an environment that is so heated that you're going to break the stuff that you spent money or work for to have? See, that was a narrative that was conveyed to you, queens. They said, well, you know what? Because your communicational skills need to be fine-tuned, somebody said, break his stuff. You'll get his attention, when in actuality, your greatest weapon is silence. Your greatest weapon is your femininity, because there's only one you. But society says, bump your femininity, put a price tag on it. And unfortunately, you're seeing examples of discord now, to the point they don't want you to be in a committed relationships no more. I want you to be with Sarah. I want you to be with Steve. I want you to just come up with an example where I can have everybody, but there ain't no peace there. And you put all that energy, and yes, what ends up happening is the experience will be tumultuous. The events, unfortunately for some, will rock your core. You know what's messed up? People still will not take accountability of the fact that they were there. Now, granted, I'm going to tell you what. If you're with someone and it's gotten to the point where you guys are physical, do yourself the greatest service and walk away. If you got something going on with you that's unresolved, because a lot of people will do that. It's called emotional baggage. They'll have a mask on. They'll say what they need to say to win your confidence. Or they will, even to the point, use the skill sets that they have to overcompensate the ones they don't. So you may be involved with somebody that uses their sexuality to keep you at bay, or use their finances to keep you distracted. And you know that. You already know that, because when you go back to asking that same question, they throw that at you. And that's their sort of way of shut up. Here. So they're coddling you. But really they're indirectly disrespecting you too, because the at the least, You have the right to ask a question. Now, the truth that comes from that, you got to be prepared for its impact. And some people are terrified of that. And that's why you hear people say, well, you know what? That's why I keep me a side chick. That's why I got a sugar daddy. That's why I got a secret account. Is that rainy day mindset. But think about it. Who's that benefit? It's not you. It benefits all the players because they were playing with you. They were playing with your mortality. They were playing with your life. And we live in a world now that diseases are more prevalent. I ain't gonna tell you about the pandemic. You already know what you need to do. But what I don't understand is why don't people have the courage to do it? I mean, it's sad. They rather promote throw it away and get another than put into work and it's sustained. Now listen. Let me make this clear. A relationship requires two, not one. It should be amicable. It should be in tandem. They should have your best interests before themselves and vice versa. And King, I'm going to tell you a little something. I'm going to leave this alone. The most beautiful creation you'll ever come to have in your life is a woman. Regardless. I'm only speaking, I'm not going PC. That's my perspective. But do you know, here's a telltale sign that she's happy. I ain't trying to blow you up, Queens. But when a woman is emotionally free or she feels emotionally safe, she exhibits that in her environment. That's why when she comes home, she's getting out of them clothes. She's carefree because she's emulating what she feels inside her. So, with that being said, if you're in a relationship, you come home and she's not comfortable around you, or it's more or less the same energy that she exhibits as she goes into the world. It's the same energy that she has in her personal life. She doesn't feel safe with you. She don't, and she won't until things change. Now, with that being said, I'm a big advocate of this. Listen, if you got some emotional baggage, if you want to be free, you got to take that backpack off, dump all that stuff out, and look at it. Look at it. Because that's what's holding you hostage. And if you don't, guess what happens? It will rob you of your mortality. It will hold your mentality hostage, and you will end up adapting to a persona that is not you. And that's not living. That is just existing. Who am I talking to? You should not be in a position emotionally where you find more solace or peace of mind outside where you live, where you lay your head. Come on, Kings. Why are you taking that victory lap before you go home? Who am I talking to? And then depending on how severe it is, you might be that person. So, well, you know what? I enjoyed this. I'm going to stick around the job a little longer. It's kind of like having a mindset of like back in the day when you were a child and your parents said, I'm going to tear that ass up. I'm going to tear you up when you get home. And you knew that you dreaded going home. Why are you doing that in your adulthood? Why are you doing that? Why? I'm just saying. I'm gonna always champion for those who don't feel that they don't have a voice. But you got a voice. You got a voice because you had that conversation in your mind all the time. You're not crazy. What's required is your discernment is asking you to act. Well, if I do that, then what I know is my reality is going to be taken away from me. But that's not yours anyway. Come on. If your environment, you do understand your environment represents your state of mind, right? So you can see it you can see it where you live at. If you don't find any reward in putting the key in the door and going into your environment, that ain't your environment. That's not. It's no different than renting a room in a hotel when you're on a trip. You can never claim it. It's just there for a purpose, temporarily. I said I know. I'm curious to know what you're afraid of. What is the one thing that you wish to get through? And I'll say this I'll say this now because I didn't. Listen, especially in the melanated community, one of the things that was discussed, that was shunned, was counseling. Go talk to somebody that is a voice of reason. Don't talk to your friends unless they're going to give you sound advice. Because some of your friends aren't your friends. They're only there because they see a opportunity to be exploited. And you know that. It's time to fly, Queen. It's time to soar, King. You know, it's like, who was that said that? How are you going to understand the view from chickens when you were really an eagle? Be blessed.